What are the most compelling 2023 training camp battles for the Baltimore Ravens? We talk about that and so much more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host here with you, Kevin Ostraker of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much for being here, making us your first listen every day on Locked On Ravens. Free and available as always, all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube. You can subscribe for free, no money involved here. If you want Ravens news, analysis, updates 5 days per week, we have it for you here, Monday through Friday. No off days, at least no weekday off days on Locked On Ravens. Here today, though, we have a lot to talk about on this show. We're getting closer and closer to training camp here. It's really, really exciting. And I want to get a little bit into the most compelling training camp battles that we have here, because there are a lot of them. And I think it's going to have a huge impact on how Baltimore's roster shakes out, how their starting lineup shakes out, and how they're going to play this year in 2023. Then we'll look a little bit at the fifth-year blues that the Ravens have, and if the Ravens could decline even more fifth-year options coming up. It's more of a peek into the future, and we'll talk about that in the second part of the show. Then finally, we'll look at some first-time Pro Bowl candidates for the Ravens, who has the best shot to make their first Pro Bowl this year. So lots to dive into. Let's start with the most compelling training camp battles. There's a lot. I'm really excited because even if, a certain guy doesn't win a job or doesn't win the battle, Ravens have depth. Now, some battles result in a guy getting cut, right? That's not, that I feel bad for the player, and that's not what you want to see. But in some cases, it's for a starting spot or for, a third wide receiver spot or something like that. So I think really the first one might go bold off the bat here, is backup quarterback. I've talked about this for a while now, especially over the course of this week. And I think Tyler Huntley versus Anthony Brown is going to be a real battle. I do. I know some people might not feel that way, but I do feel that way. I'm not as high on Tyler Huntley as some. Not saying he's bad. Again, no disrespect. But I like Anthony Brown a lot. So I want to see what he has and what he brings to the table here. So I think that positional battle is going to be really compelling for me to watch, because we know Lamar's a starter. There's no question about that 100%. But to me, I don't know. I think that a guy like Anthony Brown could make a push. And if that is the case, what's the future of Tyler Huntley? If you want to know, go look at some of the episodes we've had throughout the course of the week here, because we talk about it a little bit on the show. But another one that I'm excited about is possibly, what I say will possibly be the wide receiver battle, not the sixth spot, we'll talk about that in a second, but the fourth wide receiver spot between Nelson Agholor and Devin Duvernay. I think we're all in agreement here. The top three, no particular order: Odell Beckham, Rashod, Bateman, Zay Flowers. I think Devin Duvernay and Nelson Agholor will be fighting for that fourth wide receiver spot. Now, I've given the edge to Duvernay, but Nelson Agholor has improved and really impressed in camp based off what he did in minicamp and at OTAs. So maybe he has the inside track now. I don't know, but I'm excited to see how that plays out. And the sixth wide receiver spot's the one I'm really looking forward to, because you have a ton of guys competing essentially for what I believe is one spot. If you don't know, I'm somebody who is very much on the 6 wide receiver train. So I don't think they keep 5. I don't think they keep 7. I think it is very much so in the 5 wide receiver range for them, where that's kind of on the low end, and then the 7 range is on the high end. So 6 is right in this, like a sweet spot for me. So that 6 wide receiver spot could be Dante Demas, could be Laquan Treadwell, could be James Prochet, could be Tyler Wallace, right? There are so many options there. If I had to pick a guy, I'd probably, like, if Dante Demas impresses, I'd say him. I could see them keeping Tyler Wallace because of the special teams prowess. Laquan Treadwell, John Harbaugh seemed pretty impressed by him. I think it's probably the end of the line for James Prochet. That's a trade candidate. I should have mentioned James Prochet as a possible trade candidate on a show we did earlier. But James Prochet is somebody as well that I think could be possibly tradable. See, but I think that he's probably not going to win the 6th spot. So that battle to me in particular is very, very intriguing. But one of the most intriguing ones, we've been talking about a lot, left guard, all offseason we've been talking about it. Where is it going to be? Ben Cleveland? Is it going to be, Salah? Is it going to be a guy like, I don't know, even John Simpson, for example? Andrew Voorhees is someone who would have been in the mix there, but I don't think he's going to play this year. The Ravens probably took him as a redshirt pick, which is a very good pick for them. I love that Voorhees pick. 2024 left guard starter. That's my pick if Kevin Zeitler stays. If Kevin Zeitler goes, Voorhees is my pick for them for the right guard. So I think Voorhees starts either way, but seems like Saleh has the inside track at that job right now based off of the fact that he got first-team rep. Daniel Faalele could be an option there. Patrick McCary, maybe, but I think he's better as the Super Six offensive lineman guy for them, so I wouldn't put him in that competition. But I think that training camp battle on me is very, very intriguing. On the defensive side of the ball, playing time on the defensive line. That to me, you're not going to cut any of those top 5 guys and Michael Pierce, Brent Urban, Travis Jones, Justin Madubuike, Gabriel Washington. But playing time, right? Does Travis Jones get a ton of playing time off the bat? Does that come at the expense of a Brent Urban or a Michael Pierce? What's the playing time difference between Justin Madubuike and Broderick Washington? Those guys are going to be competing not for roster spots necessarily. In fact, I don't think for roster spots, but for playing time in this defense in now a vacated spot from Calais Campbell, where all those snaps are going to be up for grabs. So we'll see how that plays out for him. Outside linebacker wise, honestly, I don't really see one outside linebacker unless they maybe bring in a veteran like Justin Houston or something like that. Outside linebacker, I'm not too sure about that one. Inside linebacker is going to be interesting, especially kind of like the latter part of that group where Trenton Simpson, Malik Harrison, Kristen Welch, John Ross, Delshon Phillips, those guys are going to be competing for snaps. I think Trenton Simpson has it's so weird to call it easier, like an easier path to playing time because of how many hats he can put on, how many roles he can play. But at the same time, I think that, Malik Harrison. So maybe I put Harrison more in the conversation with Delshon Phillips and Kristen Welch and John Ross because Trenton Simpson can go and play outside linebacker, go and play deep or up front or whatever. So I don't know about that. I don't think there's too much of a competition between Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen, but that's really intriguing. Corner-wise, though, is intriguing to me because you know what Marlon Humphrey is, you know what Rocky Ya-Sin is, but we talked about those young guys. We've talked about them all offseason. That's more of a playing time plus roster spot because there are a lot of guys. Humphrey and Ya-Sin are 2. Then between Ardarius Washington, Jalen Davis, Pepe Williams, Trayvon Mullen, Kyle Kelly, some of the undrafted guys, that's 5. So 7 are the names I listed. The undrafted guys are more. I think the Ravens keep 6 corners. Maybe they do keep 7. I wouldn't be necessarily shocked if they did. But if it is 6, then, it's those guys competing, for all but one roster spot. So one guy gets left out in that equation there. I also think that, when it comes to the slot job, Pepe Williams versus Ardarius Washington, is that where you cut from? With Kyle Hamilton's going to play some slot, but I think John Harbaugh's made it pretty clear that he wants him and the team wants him more in a traditional safety role, for the most part. So if you feel comfortable enough with one slot guy between Ardarius Washington and Pepe Williams, and then you have Kyle Hamilton as kind of like your backup slot guy, Marlon Humphrey is your backup slot guy, maybe you can make that work, but we'll see. Safety-wise, I don't really think there's a ton of positional battles here. I mean, maybe you could make the case Brandon Stevens playing time, Geno Stone playing time, but I don't really see too much there. Special teams, there's nothing. Justin Tucker, Jordan Stout, Nick Moore, they're all good. So I'm excited to see a lot of these training camp battles. I think we're going to learn a lot about these guys. We're going to see a lot about how these guys perform under pressure, training camp, preseason. There's lots to look forward to for sure. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll look at some fifth-year Blues, talk about Patrick Queen a little bit in that fifth-year option, and what could be in store for Odafe, Oweh, and Rashod Bateman. So we should have stayed tuned. Plenty to talk about on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to be the first home run hitter. All that and not the safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet all the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner in Major League Baseball. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostraker here with you still, taking it through Ravens content. We talked about some training camp battles. Well, let's talk about some fifth-year Blues. Obviously, Ravens declined the fifth-year option on Patrick Queen. It was a major storyline, especially as the draft finished up. We were kind of wondering, well, where's the Patrick Queen rule? What's it going to be with him? Ravens declined that option. Patrick Queen has spoken about it, and, seems to have come to peace after, I think, some social media where he liked some tweets about getting traded to Houston or something, the Texans. So seems like he's come to peace with that decision. But the Ravens have a couple of big fifth-year options to make, or at least decisions on fifth-year options to make with some of their guys next year. And I know this is kind of a peek into the future, but we're going to relate it to Patrick Queen, talk about Patrick Queen a little bit still. Rashod Bateman and Odafe Oweh, 2 first-round picks for them. Now, obviously, the luxury of having first-round picks in the NFL is the fact that you do get the fifth-year option. If a player is outperforming the fifth-year option, you can accept it. And, you get a guy on essentially a bargain deal. But if not, you can cut bait after essentially 4 years and kind of go a different direction. Now, the NFL has changed the way that fifth-year options work. I think that happened, 2-3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, where it's more accolades-based and performance-based, whereas before it was more of a set number. So at this point, with teams like Lamar Jackson, for example, his fifth-year option, despite being the 32nd overall pick, was worlds higher than Baker Mayfield's, who was the first overall pick in his same draft, because of the fact that at the end of the day, Lamar Jackson had so many more accolades than Baker Mayfield. So if Rashod Bateman goes out there and has an all-pro season and makes the Pro Bowl, that contributes to the fifth-year option amount. Same thing with Odafe Oweh. Now, the interesting thing with those two guys is, they have to do it when they enter year 4. So you can't wait until the 5th year and then decline it after the 4th year. It's after the 3rd year, essentially, you have to make that decision. And then if you decline it, you can still re-sign the guy if you feel like the fit is there and it maybe wasn't with the 5th year option, or the 5th year option number wasn't what you were looking for. But it's different across, all teams, how they value these guys and what that 5th year option feels like to them when they accept it or decline it. Now, with Rashod Bateman and Odafe Oweh, they're, I'd say, in different situations. I think Oweh is one where we'll start with Bateman. I think for Bateman, he's a guy that has shown the potential. He's shown the flashes, and the thing for him is health. He has not been fully healthy in 2 seasons, has had really disappointing injuries in both of his NFL years. And for him, with what we've seen from him, I think everybody just wants to see a fully healthy Rashod Bateman season. What can this guy do with a fully healthy season under his belt? I think a lot of people are very high on him with hopefully health on his side this year, but we have to see, and the Ravens have to see. And if they don't get a full healthy season of Rashod Bateman, are they going to say we just haven't seen enough to accept a 5th year option of whatever that number would be for Rashod Bateman? I don't know. I really don't. For Odafe Oweh, for him, it's a bit more performance, right? Where we saw some of the flashes of rookie season, had a couple of really big plays. His second season, he ended up kind of not doing as well, as we know, fell off a cliff in terms of production a little bit. So if he has another down year in terms of production, I think Oweh is a guy who you probably don't pick up that 5th year option on. And then if he has a great year, you can kind of say, oh, okay, well, the 5th year option number wasn't worth it then, but we can kind of work towards a long-term deal now. Now, Patrick Queen's situation is interesting because he's someone who in a different circumstance, the 5th year option would have probably been picked up like that super, super quickly. But the way it worked out for the Ravens with inside linebackers over the course of the last 6 months or so is the fact that they traded for Roquan Smith. He's one of the best inside linebackers in the game, to put next to Patrick Queen. And then they draft Trenton Simpson, who's a very versatile inside linebacker player. So it's kind of like, well, Patrick Queen has this huge 5th year option coming up, and the Ravens then signed Roquan Smith after they traded for him during the offseason, or I think it was during the season, to a 5-year, $100 million extension. And there's, you can make an argument for it, but there's not a extremely good one for paying 2 linebackers that amount of money. Patrick Queen is a good player. His career arc has been, all things considered, very up and down his first 2 seasons. I don't think got the proper introduction to the league in terms of, that he came into the league in 2020. That was the COVID year, essentially. No in-person stuff, no rookie mini camp. Took that class a little while, I think, just to get up to speed. And with Patrick Queen being a guy who needed a little bit of, adjustments in the NFL game, it didn't help him out his first couple of seasons. But then in his 3rd year last year, really came on next to Roquan Smith, and I thought really played well. And it honestly, I want to give him credit. It happened before Roquan Smith. I've said that before, but Roquan Smith just elevated him and honestly the entire defense to a whole different level. So Patrick Queen's future in Baltimore, I'd say it's pretty iffy. I wouldn't anticipate him being back next year. I mean, maybe there's a way that it happens if Queen takes a discount if he plays well. But here's how I expect it to play out is he plays really well this year like he did last year. and the team wants to pay him. Like the team wants to pay him 60, 80, $100 million over 4 or 5 years. And the Ravens will say, that would have been great if Roquan wasn't here, but Roquan is here. And that's the situation. And paying two big money contracts to inside linebackers is, I just don't think, justifiable with the way the NFL is nowadays, where you can bring guys up into the box, inside linebackers. Like, for example, with Baltimore, they didn't have to play two inside linebackers on the field because they would just use Chuck Clark in the dime role, and that was that. For a wide receiver in Bateman or for an outside linebacker in Oweh, there was more of a reason to bring those guys back, even if there is one of those guys, like another player at that position, on a big money contract. So if you have Odell on a huge money contract after this year, because he, it all works out when he signs, because he has to if the Ravens don't want the dead money. But if that happens, you can say, well, okay, fine, we'll give Rashod Bateman the high cap number because it's fine to have two receivers on, high level cap hits. Same thing with outside linebacker, where I wouldn't anticipate the Ravens bringing in a huge outside linebacker cap hit guy over the course of the next year or so, unless they make a big trade. But it'd be better to have two high cap outside linebackers and two high cap inside linebackers. I know that whole phrasing is kind of confusing, but what I'm saying is, for Bateman and Oweh, two different circumstances, where Bateman, I think the fifth-year option is going to be determined more on health than performance, and the fifth-year option for Oweh is going to be determined more on performance than health, because it's really valuable to have these younger guys on rookie contracts. But once that third year ends, the way that the fifth-year option has been, I guess, moved. And again, the number is going to depend. Like, if Oweh doesn't have a good year and the number is lower than maybe the Ravens thought it would be, then maybe they can pick it up and say, well, we know you haven't performed very well for the past couple of years, but at that number, we're willing to bet on you one more time. With Bateman, I mean, kind of the same thing a little bit, but I think it's better to me to have the Ravens pay a wide receiver a high cap number, have the Ravens pay an outside linebacker a high cap number, and that would be that in that situation. But coming up, the final part of the show, we'll be rounding out with first-time Pro Bowl candidates, talking about who on the Ravens has the best opportunity to make their first Pro Bowl. So just stay tuned, plenty to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. We're back here rounding out Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostraker still here with you as we dive into first-time Pro Bowl candidates. I want to give a quick shout-out here to both Ryan Mink and Garrett Downing of BaltimoreRavens.com. They put out an article, their potential first-time Pro Bowl candidates, the Ravens mailbag, who, one of the questions asked was, who do you think has the best chance on the Ravens roster to be a first-time Pro Bowler? And, both guys answered the question, and I thought their answers were really good. I'm going to kind of read a little bit of what they had to say and then also give my answer as well. Ryan Mink had, several good guys. He said Marcus Williams, Tyler Linderbaum, J.K. Dobbins, Patrick Queen, and Kevin Zeitler. Now, my top pick is Kevin Zeitler. I will bang that Kevin Zeitler Pro Bowl drum until I can bang it no more, because he has deserved to be in the Pro Bowl. Each of his first 2 years as a Raven, he has gotten snubbed inexplicably. Inexplicably, he's been snubbed both times. I don't understand how it happened, but it happened, and we're here now. Kevin Zeitler absolutely deserves to be in the Pro Bowl. And look, he has to have a good year in 2023. It's just he can't get in based off past merit. But the fact that he has had such good years for Baltimore, both years he's been with the team, and he hasn't made the Pro Bowl, it doesn't sit right with me. It does not sit right with me. Dobbins is a good one. I think that there are a lot of talented running backs in the AFC. So I know how many they have 3 running backs that make the Pro Bowl. I mean, the Pro Bowl is so weird. It doesn't really mean a lot anymore. Like, I'd rather see all pros than Pro Bowls, but obviously Pro Bowl still means something, right? Like, it doesn't mean nothing. But I think Dobbins is a good choice when it comes to that as well. Also, I like the Marcus Williams pick. I think Marcus Williams has a really good shot too. Jesse Bates from Cincinnati goes to the NFC, and I think that opens up a spot in the AFC safety rotation. So, Derwin James is going to be there every season, right? There are a couple other options you could look at, but I don't know. I think Marcus Williams, Tyler Linderbaum is a good one too. I think he has a realistic shot at it. The way that he played in 2022, you could argue he could have maybe made it, but I think with another year under his belt, that's good. Patrick Queen's super interesting. I think Patrick Queen is one that, there are a lot of good inside linebackers in the AFC. Tremaine Edmonds goes to Chicago, so that's one spot open. But how cool would it be if the Ravens had 2 inside linebacker Pro Bowlers in Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen? I would personally love that. I think, so those were Ryan's 5 guys. And Garrett Downing, I see. So Garrett didn't actually answer the question. He answered another question about He actually answered a question about my second segment. He said, which 21-21 first back is at a bigger risk of not having his fifth-year option picked up? So great minds think alike, I guess. Rashod Bateman or Odafe Oweh. And just for fun here, he said that, it's a big year for both 2021 first-round picks. And I think that, his answer was pretty much Oweh, I think, for the most part, just scrolling over it here a little bit. But I think we kind of share a lot of the same points with Bateman's health and Oweh's production. So that's really funny, actually. But so Ryan's Pro Bowl options, I think, are right in line with mine. I think if I had to give another guy, I think Kyle Hamilton potentially could be a first-time Pro Bowl option. He's someone who is very versatile, as I've talked about on the show plenty. And him and Marcus Williams are both guys who can make their first Pro Bowls. I'd be really cool with that. And I think it'd be really awesome to see both those guys make the Pro Bowl. I think another guy, I'm going to throw, just for fun, I'm going to throw a crazy scenario out of left field, just out of nowhere. I think that if Patrick Ricard gets cut, that's where I'm going. If Patrick Ricard gets cut, Ben Mason would make his first Pro Bowl. Because look, hear me out. Look, I think Patrick Ricard makes the team. I don't think this is a scenario that happens whatsoever. But if Patrick Ricard gets cut, Ben Mason is somebody who, with the way that fullbacks are not really being used in the NFL anymore, with the way that he could be used as a receiver, I think the Ravens are really high on him as a receiver. Ben Mason, if he gets a role in this offense, could. That to me is one. I'll give you another one that's out of left field. Isaiah Likely. Let's get crazy here. Isaiah Likely, someone I think can make their first Pro Bowl in the event that Mark Andrews gets injured or something. I don't want that to happen, but I'm just giving scenarios out here. If Andrews gets hurt, and I really hope he does not, knock on wood. I'm knocking on wood here. Isaiah Likely, with the production that we saw out of him when Andrews did miss time with an injury last season, he could be a guy. He could absolutely be a guy that makes the Pro Bowl. So that's one. Defensive line, Justin Madubuike could be one that makes his first Pro Bowl. It's possible. I mean, with Baltimore needing defensive line snaps, and Baltimore needing really good production from at least one or two of their younger guys, and that trio of Justin Madubuike, Bracha Washington, and Travis Jones, I think Madubuike has the clearest path to playing time, and I think he will get the most playing time out of those three. And maybe he has a breakout season and he makes his first Pro Bowl there. Other ones that I could see, I don't really see any others, but I think all pro wise, like when you're talking about guys with all pros, I think that this could be a big bounce back year for Lamar and making an all pro team. We saw a couple all pros. We see the Ravens all pros all the time here with Roquan and Marlon Humphrey and all those guys. But maybe when you're talking about like evolution, what's funny about it is I think maybe if Rashod Bateman has a big year, he could make his first Pro Bowl. Maybe, right? I mean, if Odell has to miss some time and, Bateman has to be relied on and he can play full 17-game season, 17, that's what it is now. I keep getting confused. A full 17-game season, I think that Bateman could. Another sleeper one. This one isn't necessarily out of left field completely. Jordan Stout. Maybe Jordan Stout makes his first Pro Bowl. Again, very up and down year, I'd say, for Jordan Stout last year. I think we were all expecting maybe a little more, but from what we saw consistently with Sam Cook for so many years in Baltimore, there was always going to be that drop off, and I think maybe it hit people a little bit harder than others. So I don't know, what Jordan Stout's career trajectory will be. Maybe it won't be anywhere close to Sam Cook. Maybe it will be, but with another year with Cook, with the special team staff there in Baltimore, maybe it is. But my favorite, I would feel so happy for J.K. Dobbins if he were to make it. I mean, he's somebody who works extremely hard. Obviously, he's looking for a big contract, number 2. It would help him a lot when it comes to that contract, too, getting the Pro Bowl accolade in there as well. That'd be massive. And, you talk about it up. I just talked about it in the second segment. Odafe Oweh and Rashod Bateman making the Pro Bowl. Since the fifth-year option is accolades based, it would help them a ton in terms of getting that up. But again, the Pro Bowl compared to what it was, we've had the conversation about, how the NFL should fix the Pro Bowl and what it should be and whatnot. The All-Star game in the NBA is kind of similarly declining in popularity, where people just don't play defense. I mean, they had to make the Pro Bowl game a flag football game this past year. It's completely dead. And part of the reason is because, guys just don't want to risk getting injured. And that to me is like, you talk about like the NBA in-season tournament they're doing, I think is going to be in like December or something. It's those like meaningless games that players don't want to go out there and get injured and cost themselves money in that. So the game itself is complicated. I think what they should do to fix the Pro Bowl and make more guys want to actually go to, the Pro Bowl games or whatever it is, they can have the games aspect, but I also think with just you vote guys to the Pro Bowl and then guys can decline or accept as they want. You don't have to necessarily force them to be there. You don't have to have all these alternates. You just say, if you want to go, you can go. If you don't, you don't have to. And then you just keep going. You have like 50 alternates. Like, you don't have to announce them, but you have 50 alternates of guys. You send out the invitation. If the guys want to go, great. If they don't, whatever, they don't have to go. But it's such a weird thing because football is such a violent sport. And if you don't play hard in the Pro Bowl, no one's going to want to watch it. But if you do, there's an increased risk for injury. And how worth it is it for you to tear your ACL in the game? So the Pro Bowl now is more for show. Like, you have the 5-time Pro Bowler, and it's more like, oh, they're recognized as one of the best in their conference. And obviously all pros as well is another thing that is the accolade aspect of it. But I think that Baltimore has a lot of up and coming players. We've talked about the ceilings of these guys, talked about how deep they are as a team. Baltimore has a lot of guys that can go out there and perform at a high level. And I think we will see. I mean, my prediction is that we will see one Raven make their first Pro Bowl. I think there are too many good options between Kevin Zeitler and Patrick Queen and Marcus Williams and J.K. Dobbins and all those guys, Jordan Stout and all those guys I mentioned. Again, the Ben Mason, the Isaiah Likely, like, okay, I get it. Probably not going to happen. That's more of a shot in the dark if a very specific situation happens. But there are enough actually like realistic options for them to make the Pro Bowl in their first year where I'm confident to predict that Baltimore will have at least one guy, if not multiple, and make their first NFL Pro Bowl. So I'm excited. I really, the games itself are not that exciting to me anymore. I mean, like Tyler Huntley made it last year. Was he deserving of it? It's up for debate. I mean, I'm happy he made it. Like, the shout out to Tyler Huntley. He's a Pro Bowl quarterback. You cannot take that away from him no matter how hard you try. But again, I just think the way the Pro Bowl set up now, it's not as fun to watch, which is unfortunate. But it's about the accolade. It's about getting recognized, is having your accomplishments recognized. So hopefully a couple of Ravens can have their accomplishment recognized this year. But that's all I have here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Be sure to subscribe, follow along in audio form. When we get back here on Monday, more Ravens content from us. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I'll see you right back here on Monday on Locked On Ravens.